Today, we're looking at Colorverse Einstein's Ring. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Colorverse Einstein's Ring is kind of a magenta ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And this gives us some really interesting colors because it gives us a very light greenish yellow on the bottom that works its way up into a light purple, then a very magenta, a light magenta, and a very dark magenta across the top. It's really quite interesting. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And we see that there is a very distinct green line across the bottom. That green line is not trying to budge at all. Further, we don't see any of the green push up, but only kind of a pink push up, and then we get a magenta and a purple across the very top. So it looks quite different for being allowed to dry for 10 minutes. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. Now I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it generally does pretty good, but the second H had a lot of blooming and spreading all over the place, which makes me worry. However, that lowercase h is completely readable. So while it doesn't look great, I feel it's safe to use in a note-taking environment if you had to highlight. The water reactivates and pulls up most of this ink, except this kind of greenish tan on the bottom. That, I believe, is the holdout that we saw on the chromatography. Pen flush does about the same as water, but actually, in certain areas, you start to see some white come through in just a couple little spots. I'm hoping that that pen flush is all that would be needed to remove this from your pen, because it seems it can take a little bit more than the water. Even though the pen flush has that darker ring in the center, I see a couple spots where it's even lighter. So I'm hoping that that is the end of what's needed. Bleach is, for the most part, removing it from the page. This yellow staining that's left behind, I believe, is the remnant of that greenish tan that we saw on the bottom of the chromatographies. I picked this ink up in sample form, and even if I wasn't doing this stuff, I would have probably gone after this just for being named Einstein Ring. To be honest, I'm kind of a nerd. I think they might have got me with that one. To keep my writing sample consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at that Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It does offer some shading in the areas where you've gone and put it a bit heavier. Like in the K, where you get a bunch of it going back and forth on it. The H in the gets a little darker. Not a ton of it. You do get spots of darker in the writing of the extra fine. 9 seconds to dry. The medium, noticeably darker tone. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us what we got. The scrubby for the extra fine shows us a little bit of color variation, which we got. For the medium, no color variation. We didn't get any. And the smear test, I don't think you could recover this. Let's look at Tomoe River. No bleeding. We do get ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo. Almost looked like it was halo. No halo, no sheen, no shade. This paper kills it. I just don't like this. I got it. I started with it, and as I use it, I don't really care for it. I might be the only person in the fountain pen world. I know I've said it before. I'm alone. Extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 15 seconds to dry.
The medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 20 seconds to dry, but it is a noticeably darker tone than we got with the extra fine. The extra fine is noticeably darker than what we got with the 1.1. The scrubby for the extra fine and the medium both show us we're not going to get a lot of color variation, and we didn't. The smear test, you wrote it on Tomoe River. Good luck recovering that. So I look at this on Rhodia. Other than in the scrubby where it's starting to come through, but I put it on stupid thick, it has no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, but I'm sorry, it does give light shade. I said no shade. It does give some light shading. It's not tons. It's just where you put it on heavier. The K in quick, the X in fox, the bottom of the B in brown, the bottom of the Z in lazy. You get areas with some darker tones. 10 seconds to dry. Noticeably darker tone with the medium. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 13 seconds to dry. This really made me feel like wetter pens were going to destroy this ink and what it could do, although it's not like it gives a lot of color variation. The scrubby for the extra fine shows some color variation. We did get little bits of color variation. The scrubby of the medium shows it's no color variation. We didn't get any. The smear test says we could likely recover it, and I'll believe that. But I put this in a Noodler's Ahab, and behold, I get shading. I get shading quite nicely in the frequently. Much darker on the bottom than it is on the top. It gets darker into the R, lighter into the E, dark at the top of the Q, light as it comes out. Very nice here. This is fantastic. This makes me very happy with the fact that I know I'm going to wind up with a bottle of this because it's named Einstein and I'm a sucker. So I looked at yellow Rhodia, which of course gave no bleeding and no ghosting, but what happened to the color for a different paper? Noticeably darker tones all the way across. All three. Noticeably darker. Not the biggest deal in the world. It's not destroying the color. It still makes it a very nice color. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Mostly no shade. We lose a lot of what we had in the shading with the white. We do get some areas that it is darker. It is a little darker in the K. It is a little darker on the P. It is a little darker on the L and the A, but not the ZY. Yes, we have some shading. I don't really want to call it shading. That's why it was so fast with the no shading. There's really very little. But if you're being biased like I am because it's named Einstein Ring and I really want to like this ink, I like the color. It just doesn't give a lot of the performance. That would be nice. 10 seconds to dry. Noticeably darker tone when we get to the medium. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us we're not going to get any color variation. We didn't. No surprises. The smear says we're probably going to be able to recover it. So I put this onto Life paper. Now it's a laid paper, but it's laid very nicely, and you really don't get to see the texture except super up close. Focus. Can we see the texture? You want to show us the texture, camera? There it is. You see there's texture of the paper. It's a laid paper. Very nice. This is one of my preferred papers, especially for correspondence. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Yes, we get points of shading, not tremendous shading. The T is darker than the S, darker than the E. On color, the O is darker than the R. It gets darker from the S to the E, so we do get shading on the 1.1. The extra fine, darker tone, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and yes, we're getting color variation. We see that the is a very different tone than over. We see shading within the word quick. It goes from dark to light to dark again. So we get both kinds of shading here where it's a word to word and within a single word. Sorry, I bumped the camera. Within a single word, and 7 seconds to dry. Now the medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, Noticeably darker tone than we had with the extra fine, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine shows us some color variation. We did get color variation. The medium shows none. We didn't get any. The smear said we can likely recover it, but if I'm writing you a letter on this paper and I smear like that, I start all over again because I'm anal retentive. Franklin Christoph. Other than it's starting to come through a little bit, but not actually through, it's just very, very deep on the scrubby, which really doesn't count because it's stupid thick. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It's very boring on this paper. This ink is boring on this paper. The extra fine, noticeably darker tone than we got with the 1.1. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 3 seconds to dry. The medium is again a noticeably much darker tone with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. Now when we look at the scrubby, we don't expect to see color variation because there's none there, and we didn't get any in the writing, so nothing to be surprised about. The smear test says you could likely recover this if you smeared while you were writing, and I tend to believe that. And that's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Colorverse Einstein's Ring, I would prefer to find a color that complements the color on the page. I've chosen Diamine's Jet Black because black is such an easy one to match with so many. This is a great magenta, and I feel like the black really draws the attention to your magenta writing. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Colorverse Einstein's Ring? I think the color looks fantastic. I think it falls short in a lot of the properties that I care for the most in ink. The most that I care for is shading. It matters almost everything to me. Almost. They have good marketing. And being a math nerd and being called Einstein's Ring, even though it's a space theme, I'm going to probably wind up buying a bottle of this ink. Good marketing can help you be satisfied with certain inks. So I've never had a problem with that idea that you use an ink that's not perfect because it makes you happy, like this one does. Thanks for watching.